this week's message, a message that we received was, it is, when I first got it, I was sort of like, okay, is this something that we already know? And to a degree, yes, but we don't understand. I think there's nuances to this message that we don't fully grasp and that I think are more important than we realize. So that's, I think, why this message is so important. And the message is about trust. And it's about trust as one of our superpowers and how to reclaim it for ourselves. So it's a great message. There's really strong guidance in here for us, and some really excellent spiritual principles that I'm super excited to talk about. So I'll share the message with you guys, and then of course we'll break it down afterwards and talk it through. And I think we can really help to glean the really, like, why, when our Isla and the angels only get one message a week to talk with us, why this, why now? And it is that important. So I'm excited to talk about it. So before I dive into it, one of the things that's come to my awareness just recently, and I feel like I should mention it now, kind of preemptively, is that there has been a lot of talk in the cyber sphere, particularly in very, very fundamentalist or religious circles, about this concept of the mark of the beast. Have you heard about it? Everybody heard about this concept of the mark of the beast? So there's a lot. Think about the sound of that, right? The mark of the beast. It sounds terrifying, right? It sounds like you have been blacklisted from the gates of heaven and you will never get in the mark of the beast. Don't accept the mark of the beast. This is what's being circulated. And it's like, it's very, to me, I hear that, I'm like, oh, where's the beast? It's like a very scary thought. But I want to bring it to our attention because there's something to this that I think we need to glean from and separate from the fear, which is, there is a high probability that in our future, there will be a new technology that's introduced, which is incredibly appealing. And it will be like the same amount of change that we receive with cell phones. It will be this chip that comes in, which could potentially be implanted in your hand, right? And there's a ton of people who have seen visions of this, who've had dreams about this. There's a lot of like broadcasting. This is coming. This is coming. And here we are moving into, all air signs and Gemini and and we're going to have like technologies coming. So this concept of this chip in your hand. So the reality is that it isn't there's no reason to have fear of this chip, but I personally will not get it when it comes. And the reason is because this goes back to sort of the ancient battle that many of you may have heard of between like Lemuria and the other one that starts with an A that my mind is having a brain fart. You know what Atlantis and Lemuria. So the story of Atlantis and Lemuria is that Atlantis went down the path of technology and Lemuria did not. And it was heart-centered versus head-centered. And so the challenge that we are facing right now on our journey, one of the many challenges that we're facing, is learning to turn in and learning to trust our heart. And we talk about that all the time together, about the importance of learning to start to navigate the world from our heart, to follow our joy, to listen to our heart, to let our heart be the lead and let our head follow. But it's not easy to learn to listen to, like learning to listen to our guides, learning to listen to our intuition, like, serendipity, all these things. When we get a message, we are so elated, you know what I mean? And then immediately afterwards, it feels like it was a dream. And it's like, did that even really happen? So it's very hard for us to hang on to right now. And so saying, well, hey, you could either follow this really confusing path of trying to listen to your intuition and listen to your guides, or you could have a cell phone. You could just Google it. Like, that's so much easier, right? It is so much easier. The challenge is that it literally interrupts our evolution as a soul. So it is not a small problem. It's a very big problem. Because if we have a very easy remedy that makes it so we don't need to listen to our guides, that we don't need to follow our heart, which is hard to do, then we're never gonna do it, because we're humans and we like things that are easy. we choose the easy path. So that is why this mark of the beast, this chip that is going to potentially come, that could be implanted on our hands, and this applies even now to why is it that we should be aware of our use of cell phones and our use of things. It doesn't mean that you need to unplug from the internet or anything like that. It simply means that the more reliant that we become on technology, the more integrated it becomes into our lives, the easier it gets to use, the more of our thought processes that it takes over, the further and further away we get from where we're supposed to be going. And so that is the split, right? That's the split that we need. And it has to be a conscious choice, because the other one is like, it's really fun and cool and easy and nice, and it's going to be awesome, and it'll be like, I need eggs, hand, and then eggs show up in your refrigerator. It's going to be like so easy and so appealing. So it's gonna be a thing where like, I think the way that we sort of forearm ourselves is to be working on that connection now, beginning to develop it, so we have faith in it, that we trust it, which gets back to the message of this week, which is this idea that we have to really embrace trusting ourselves, trusting our guidance. The key to our evolution as a soul is to understand that we are all that we need, that everything comes from inside of us. And anytime we are externalizing our choices, externalizing our beliefs, ourself, or anything about ourself, is we're letting the outside world determine for us what we should be determining for ourselves, we have lost our way. So the pathway forward is to try in every single way we can to come back to ourselves and to say, what do I want? What do I choose? What do I feel? Where is my joy? And have to try to find that authenticity inside of us. So I mention this now because this thing has not come out yet, right? I mention it now so that we can reflect backwards and say, yeah, okay, this is that thing, right? But we're going to start to apply it even now that we all have cell phones. So can we adopt a practice of, like, I'm going to continue using my cell phone. It's a fabulous tool, but I don't want to have it open so much, right? I want to be conscious of when I'm using it. I don't want to default to, okay, well, I have a spare minute, I'm bored, open my phone, right? Or if I'm using it, I want to use it intentionally. So it is, can I, rather than Googling like which restaurant I'm going to go to, can I say, okay, Spirit, guide me? And can I feel which way to go? Can I choose moment by moment, guide me here, guide me there, play a game, make it fun, start practicing this idea of guiding yourself through your heart rather than relying on the external world to feed you information. So, and it is, I get it. It's really tempting because it is so much easier. It's so easy to type in on Google, and I do this all the time, vegan restaurants near me. And then I look at which one has the most stars and boom, decision made. I'm going. But can I challenge myself to live and be in a more intuitive fashion now, so that I start building that muscle, so that as the world starts to evolve faster and faster in the way of technology, that I have the inner strength to trust my inner knowing. So it's something heavy because it is laced with so much fear, and it's a shame because the message is actually underneath the fear. There's a good message there, which is trust yourself, which is don't let the external world dictate your life for you. But it has been wrapped within religion in a cloak of fear rather than trusting us to make good choices for ourselves. So that's why I bring it up. And I feel like if we can talk about this within our own circles and with people we know who might be receptive to talking about it, maybe we can start to communicate about this now so that this technology doesn't get as much of a control hold over humanity as it potentially could. Think about how ubiquitous smartphones are today, and how even the most rural populations are now being connected to the internet. So there will be nobody in the world that is not a market for this new chip. So really it is, I think, forewarned, but not warned in the sense of fear, warned in the sense that we have a conscious choice to make about how we're going to proceed. And what will that be like? How easy will it be to make that choice? I don't even want to think about it. You know what I mean? Like, maybe it's hard. I don't know. But my choice is, I don't care. I don't care how hard it is, because I recognize this life is like one chapter in a very long book of the history of my soul. And I know that if I become too dependent on technology, I will lose that path. And there will be no reason for me to be in this life anymore. Because the whole point of living, right, is to expand and grow and evolve as a soul. So yeah, maybe it'll be really easy. Maybe it'll be a thing like, well, if you don't have a smartphone, they just have to accommodate you at the restaurant and give you a paper menu, It may be that easy. but it might be harder. So, but I think the more of us that do decide no, the more we have to be accommodated. So that's why I say there's strength in numbers on this one. And that's why I say bring it up now. Talk about it with anybody that is not going to think you're crazy. Anybody where you feel comfortable talking about it in a no fear way. When it comes sharing publicly your feelings about it and doing our best to create enough of a not resistance, because they never want us to be in resistance, an alternate and more heart focused truth is, I think, in our benefit in the long run. Does that make sense, you guys? Yeah. So, okay. So, if you are ready, I would love to go ahead and dive into the message for the week. So, take a breath and let's dive in. Blessings. I am here. I am here with you. And we are speaking again today on new subjects, new things, interesting topics. I am always, always enjoying our conversations. I wish to share with you today that you can trust in something, that trust in and of itself is something valuable. To trust is to allow, and to allow is to be receptive, and to be receptive is to open the door to the new consciousness. Trust is in the allowing, in the acceptance of something as truth. Trust is when you open your heart, when you take off the shelf that which is guarded and make it available to yourself and others. It is an open doorway, an open window. It is when you let down your guard, when you soften what you have been against. To trust and to be trusting has not always served you well. It has at times derailed you. It has led you into a consciousness that believes what is sacred can be lost. It draws you into an awareness of what has been tragic, what has been felt deeply. There is within your trusting nature the availability to be misled, to be lied to feel deeply. What I would say to you as you are moving into this next state of being is to reclaim your trust now. It's like taking back an energy, not as a savior, but as one who is in recognition of who they are and have always been. That you need no savior. You are savior enough for yourself. To be trusting and to be disappointed does not mean you have been greatly misled within yourself. It merely means that the circumstances have been available for wrongdoing. There has been a weakening in yourself, which did make available this mishap to occur within your field. But the trust itself is not an occurrence that is misleading. Trusting and to have a trusting nature is not something that in and of itself calls you backward or against your higher purpose. To be trusting can be fruitful when aligned with wisdom, when aligned with pure heart, pure thought, pure energy. In the times that are coming, the trusting natured will find it easier to envelop themselves with clarity in the new consciousness. They are willing to open their hearts. They are willing to try again. Though you have been derailed, though it has made you uncomfortable, though you have learned not always is trust respected. How will you know? How will you find your way when your trust has been so mishandled? How will you let go of resentment and protections and the great vest of insulation you wear about yourself to keep away those intrusions? And I would say to you now that your trust is an elevation, a tool to lift you up, that you may rely upon it like a bridge to carry you forward. Trust is easily found again when you settle upon the concept that these past mishaps were not derived from your trust, but from what else was apparent in that moment, from where else you were entangled at that time. That the trust was but a gentle barrier that did not prevent those occurrences from happening. It did not encourage them to happen. As you are transfixing upon your new future, the gentleness of this barrier is exactly what is needed. It is a softening, a receptivity. How can you wrangle against the protective nature that has been your solace, that has helped you guard against the pain of past occurrences? It is a choice to be made. In the softening, in the letting go, you free up so much energy. So much wisdom flows through you by so doing. You open yourself to a greater volume of divine energy when you allow your trusting nature to shine again. It lifts you in a moment. It raises you into a perspective within which divinity is shared. From here, yes, your judgment is more thoughtful, carries wisdom. That is the protection. It is not to be on guard within your own field. It is the perceptiveness that you will have, which you will anchor into what you ought to want, what you ought to feel, what you ought to chase, where you can find yourself more easily, where you can reach for the deeper part of yourselves. There's truth in the saying that what is forgiven is not easily forgotten. And this has been your hardship, and this has been your dormancy, where you have closed yourselves off from each other. And I would encourage you now to become aware that trust is a gateway through which you must voyage. It is an opening of the self, letting down of your barriers. And so many might feel or say, what about the evildoers, the wrongdoers of our time? How might one cohabitate or protect themselves against a similar occurrence? A trusting heart is a glad and happy heart. A happy heart needs no protection. A happy heart rises with the chorus of energies that are coming for you. It lifts you into a new field of experiencing. Shall this be without wisdom? No, no. To be trusting without wisdom is chaos indeed. But to be trusting where you are now, in the stage of life you have attained, where you are within reach of your own self-understanding, that is something different. And I would encourage yourselves to return your focus and your focal point back to the concept of your own trust, and to discover where you are yet holding on to the specter of wrongdoing, holding yourself against it, resisting what is. And ask yourself this riddle: how might you open the door if you are so actively keeping it shut? And trust is the key. It is how to open the doorway, to let the light of your divinity move through you, to access the wisdom that keeps you safe. Therefore, you must take a leap. You must make a choice. If you choose to move forward, you must embrace what you are, who you are, how you are, and trust the world to embrace you. You must experience yourself in freedom. You must know what it is to like this world as a reflection of what you are. This is trust. Trust is before you now. Trust dangles like a song you remember tinkling slowly, quietly, far away, calling you back to itself, offering you this recipe for your own enhancement, for the ease of your voyage, to find a way to soften what you are holding yourself against, to release your grip, to open your heart just a little bit more. Trust is the antidote, not entirely a cure, but it opens you up to what is the powerful flow of your own joy. And this will carry you far. I say bless you, thank you, and goodbye. So, yeah, beautiful, beautiful message. Isla does it. She's cool. She's so cool. And I do think it's a really powerful message, this idea that we have given trust a bad name, that we blame our trust for the bad things that happen to us, right? To us, when in fact they are for us. And we think, oh, I'm not going to do that again. It's like Gomer Pyle said, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. You know what I mean? This idea that we're going to put up our walls and our barriers and we're not going to trust so easy the next time. And the challenge is that is a little bit like deciding, like, you get this amazing tool, like you're given a car and you take the car out and you have a fender bender and you're like, whoa, that wasn't fun. I better not drive that car again. And that's kind of what we do, is we say, we devalue the tool, not recognizing it's just a tool. Trust is a tool, and you can use it for good or you can use it for bad. It can do amazing things for you, or it can also not. So it depends on how we wield the trust. But it is a powerful tool, and that is the point that Isla is trying to make, is that we have labeled the tool as something bad, when in fact it's not the tool that's bad, it was how it was used, the circumstances we were in, that we were not very proficient trusters at the time, that we were hurt. So, so I can look back in my life and say, okay, there was periods where I had to wrestle with major trust issues, and I literally only resolved them it was like a year and a half ago. I kind of got through the last of my trust issues. And it was a moment, I will tell you, because every time I have been given messages from my angels and guides, and they've told me, this is your wound and this is what you need to work on, I would be like, let me at it. Let's go. I could hardly wait, because I knew that something better was on the other side. Like, I cannot wait to stop feeling that way. Let me heal that. So I would work on it immediately. But when they told me that I needed to I needed to open up and trust, that I needed to set down my protections, the last thing I wanted to do was do it. It was like, oh no. And it felt like, and this was in relationship, and it felt like I was hiding behind a very cozy fence. I had this lovely wall built and I was hiding behind it, and I did not want to come out. I was like, this is a good wall. Why would I want to leave this wall? It's really good, and it was, all little things that I held back, that I didn't share, that I was like, I'm just going to keep this to myself behind my cozy wall. But this message was consistent, and it was clear that wall is not serving you. And I had to, it's a little bit like fearing that there's like a firing squadron on the other side and you have to step out from behind the wall. And that is what it felt like to me. But it was everything I could muster to force myself to step out from behind the wall too. And it was a conscious decision to say, okay, fine. I could feel it inside of myself. I will set down this wall, and I will just let my fire away. Here I come. You know what I mean? And that had to be the feeling. It was like, okay, I'm just going to step out and see what happens. The shocking thing that happened when I did that is that I recognized that the wall wasn't protecting me at all. Is that all the wall was doing was holding in place my old wounding. That's all it was doing. It was not providing me anything good. It was literally a structure that was holding in place an old framework, which I was just living and living and living and living in. It was a wall I was bumping into, not a fence that was protecting me. right? And I couldn't see it until I stepped out from around it, and all the fear, everything that I'd been experiencing dissolved instantly, right? And it was a major eye opener for me. So trust, right? Trust. The challenge about this message is that we have our hard-earned lessons, the places where we've been wounded, and we all have them, right? They come in different flavors, but we all have them. And we hang on to those little protective vests because we think we're being smart, that we are streetwise. We've learned our lesson. We're not going to do that again. And so we've taken our car and we're like, I'm going to put that car in the garage. That car stinks. We don't want it. When in fact, it's like some amazing Porsche that you really love. So, anyways. so, anyways. But the challenge is that in order to access the trust, it's like a chicken and egg. Which comes first? It's like this always in spirit. And this is like one of the suckiest things about spirit is that it is always a chicken and egg thing. And that it is never a thing, we're like, well, I'll trust as soon as the world is trustworthy. Like, I wanted it to be chicken, not egg. And they're like, sorry, it has to be egg and then chicken. You have to trust first, and then the world will be trustworthy. And that is not how we want it. Right? We want it to be, well, let the world show up differently and then I will be different. And it can't be that way, because guess what is creating the world? We are, right? The world is emanating from inside of us. So the world can't change unless we choose to be different. So we have to return to our trust. And then when we do, the world will become trustworthy. So, and she's not saying that we're meant to just go out there and like leave our wallet on the table at a restaurant on purpose and see what happens. Like, she's not saying that you need to go out and be foolish, right? She's saying it is within the umbrella of wisdom. But this is the beautiful thing that happens, is that what she's saying is that when we open up to trust, when we put down our barriers, those barriers are just like the wall that I thought was my fence protecting me, is that it is in front of your heart. That barrier is closing your heart off, which prevents you from accessing divine wisdom. So if we want more flow, if you're like, how can I have a conversation with my own guides? How do I channel? How do I get this information? Trust, right? We have to remove the barrier. We have to excavate our heart, move everything that's in the way of your heart. And that includes our protections, especially our protections, because the truth is that you are an infinite and powerful being, and you don't need any protections. It's like she says, a happy heart doesn't need protection, right? When your heart is free, when your heart is full of love, it doesn't need to be protected because the light is filling it up from the inside out. It's like a room that is dark. You've turned the light on. The dark can't get back in. It's full of light. The dark can't get in. That's your heart. When you open up and allow your trust, you get that Porsche out of the garage. I like Porsches. You get the Porsche out of the garage, and there you go. And you're gonna go off and have a great time. So this to me is the message, and I think it is so important, particularly in light of the conversation we've been having about technology, right? And about how easy it is to externalize authority and externalize our choices and externalize our judgment. Everything, right? We're letting everything be decided outside of ourselves, what path we should take, what job we should have. We let so many of our decisions be made outside of us. And the spirit is asking us, this shift of consciousness is asking us to reclaim our sovereignty and to come back to our own wisdom. But we can't access the wisdom until we trust. And it's difficult to trust because we did it before and it hurt. And so we closed down that mechanism. So, and we are infinitely powerful. We are absolutely capable of shutting down our receptivity. So as a matter of fact, like one of the challenges of my first marriage is that there was things I didn't want to see. And I completely shut off my third eye, completely, because there's stuff I didn't want to perceive. And so part of my healing journey was opening back up that third eye, which involved trust. I had to rebuild my trust in myself, right? Because I thought, well, I should have seen that. I should have known. How could I not have known, right? I had to learn that I am trustworthy. that it wasn't the trust that was the problem. It was everything around it, right? It was how I used the trust. I decided to, I was escaping my reality. I wasn't willing to face things. There was stuff I didn't want to see because I felt unsafe in the world. So it wasn't the trust, it was everything else. And I just misused my trust. I used it to, as an escape, to let go of my sovereignty, to let go of my responsibility for my own choices. So, right? So much in this. So, okay. Let's break it down. So here's what she says. She says, blessings, I am here. I am here with you. And we are speaking again today on new subjects, new things, interesting topics. I am always, always enjoying our conversations. So that seems like a simple entrance, but her focus is on joy. So it's not a comment for nothing, right? She's saying, why is she having this conversation with us? It is not because she's coming with some future focus for us. She's like, I'm living in the now and I'm in my joy. That's the point of the first paragraph. I'm in the now and I'm in my joy. Next paragraph. I wish to share with you today that you can trust in something. That trust in and of itself is something valuable. To trust is to allow, and to allow is to be receptive, and to be receptive is to open the door to the new consciousness. So in a paragraph, she lays it out. This is why this is so critical, right? That when we trust, we put down our barriers, we put down the wall, and that makes us, we become allowing, right? We allow things in and out of our heart space. And what does that create? Communication with who? Higher self. So we become receptive to information. We become receptive to energy from our higher self. So to trust is to allow, right? To allow communication. When we allow communication, the communication comes through our heart, to our receptive heart, and that opens the door to new consciousness, which is this connection to all that is. So that this is the reason why. She says, trust is in the allowing, in the acceptance of something as truth. Trust is when you open your heart, when you take off the shelf that which is guarded and make it available to yourself and others. It is an open doorway, an open window. It is when you let down your guard, when you soften what you have been against. So one of the things I like about this particular paragraph is when I like the visual of when you take something off the shelf. So that is kind of what we do after we've been wounded, right? When we having a trust issue means that you're keeping a part of yourself on the shelf and you're not letting anybody have it, including what I like about here, including yourself, right? That she says that it makes it available to yourself and others. So which one is more important? So you put something up on the shelf, you're like, I'm not going to have that anymore. I'm not going to touch it anymore. I'm going to take that gorgeous Porsche and stick it in the garage because I had a fender bender. Well, you're depriving yourself more than anybody. And that, I think, is a really cool part about this paragraph. So the concept here is she's really referencing our resistance, that when we have a trust issue, what we are experiencing is resistance and protection. We're protecting ourselves. We're preventing that first stage, which is letting things come and go easily out of the heart, which opens us up to that communication. Softening, and then here's a clue too, soften what you have been against. So I think anywhere in our world where we feel a strong polarity, where we feel a strong resistance, where something really makes you really mad or makes you really upset or makes you really scared, that is something you are against. So that would be a great place to look at to say, is there a trust issue in this particular area? Is there something here that I can excavate? Anywhere where we have a strong resistance is a great clue. Next paragraph. To trust and to be trusting has not always served you well. It has at times derailed you. It has led you into a consciousness that believes what is sacred can be lost. It draws you into an awareness of what has been tragic, what has been felt deeply. This, I think, is a very poignant paragraph. This idea that yes, we have all been wounded deep enough for us to begin to at least flirt with the belief, or believe it wholly, that what is sacred can be lost. So that sacred, what is sacred, it can be something taken from you, right? A part of yourself stolen away, right? And that part of yourself is your Porsche in the garage. That is the part that's been stolen from you. It is your trust, right? Your trust has been stolen away. So any part of yourself that you lose, and you can only lose something if you choose to give it up. So you can have a situation where say for example, your home is robbed. It's a terrible experience to have your home robbed. People come in and take your things. And from that, people can have a choice about how they're going to feel about that. They can feel personally violated, right? They can feel unsafe, right? Or they can decide that the things that were taken are things they didn't need, right? Very different perspective. And one stems from the belief, right, that what is sacred can be lost, that parts of you can be stolen from you, can be taken away, that you can be diminished. And the truth of it is that's not possible, that you are infinite, that you are a spark of the divine, that no one can take that from you. And that everything else that's here is just part of the play, the charade of living that we are experiencing. So, and if we decide that we lost something, it is because we chose to put it in the garage, right? We said, I am no longer going to let that part of myself out because I don't feel safe anymore, right? I'm going to now lock all my doors, and I'm going to put up protections and barriers in the bad world. That is me taking my ability to flow and to trust, and I'm putting it on a shelf because I have chosen to do so. Nobody did it to me. Does that make sense? It's a little bit complicated because it's very hard for us to separate ourselves from the idea that the world is happening to us. So let's keep going, and I think it gets clearer as she goes. So then she says, there is within your trusting nature the availability to be misled, to be lied to feel deeply. What I would say to you as you are moving into this next state of being is to reclaim your trust now is like taking back an energy, not as a savior, but as one who is in recognition of who they are and have always been, that you need no savior. You are savior enough for yourself. So here she's explaining this idea that yes, when we trust, certainly it can open us up to bad things happening, right? Because of the fact that we are in easy and open communication, open flow. We have experiences, and anytime you have experiences, some of those experiences can be bad. So, but she says that to reclaim our trust is in fact taking back an energy that we chose to set aside, that we lost. It is taking the Porsche out of the garage. And we need to think of it that way. That don't think of our trust as this thing that is a weakness, right? Where we're foolish or people take advantage of us, but we're too trusting, right? It is rare in our world that someone describes being trusting as a strength, right? It is, we say, oh, that person is really trusting. It sounds like they're foolish, they're easily misled, they're gullible, right? It is never described as a strength. She's telling us that's not true. She's saying it is an enormous strength. It is a Porsche in the garage. Trust opens you up to higher wisdom, which is the be all end all of what it is to be a soul. It connects you to the infinite. So she's saying it is in fact a superpower. Trust is. We just don't understand it. We blame our trust for the bad things that have happened. We think the trust is the problem. It's not. She says it's definitely not. So she says reclaiming it now is like taking back an energy. Then she says not as a savior, but as one who is in recognition of who they have always been. So in other words, we're not going to take it back now and say, well, this will fix me, right? All these big things happen to me. Maybe if I take my trust back, then the trust will save me. She says, no. Nothing needs to save you, right? You need no savior. You are savior enough for yourself. So the trust is just a tool. The trust is just a Porsche. It won't go anywhere unless you put gas in it, unless you drive it, right? It's just a tool. And so the trust doesn't save you. The trust is just the doorways. You got to open the door. That's all it is. And then she said, but if we blame it, we're depriving ourselves of a really amazing tool. Next, and the big thing is we just need to get out of that concept that we have been a victim, right? That we've been a victim of the bad things that have happened to us, and recognize that in all moments, the world is conspiring to teach us, to show us things happen for us, right? It's part of being guided on a path to deeper and deeper self-knowledge. And unfortunately, trust is a casualty that often happens during that process. So now she's saying now is the time to take it back. To be trusting and to be disappointed does not mean that you have been greatly misled within yourself. So, in other words, it doesn't mean you can't trust your trust. It merely means that the circumstances have been available for wrongdoing. There has been a weakening in yourself which did make available this mishap to occur within your field. But the trust itself is not an occurrence that is misleading. Trusting and to have a trusting nature is not something that in and of itself calls you backward or against your higher purpose. So in other words, she says that the circumstances were available. And the circumstances were created by what? By our internal wounding, right? She says there has been a weakening, which is like a wounding. There's been a wounding inside of yourself, which did make available this mishap to occur. So there was something in our self that we needed to see, something that we needed to be aware of. And yes, we were trusting in that moment, and it did make that happen. But the trust is not the cause of it. The being trusting didn't make it. It's not like there's people out there that are sniffing out people who are trusting so that they can take advantage of them. Though they even say, like how does someone sniff out a likely victim is because they have victim consciousness, not trusting consciousness. What does a person look like when they're trusting, right? If you think about, like, for example, children who have Down syndrome and how they seem to just glow from the inside out, how their faces light up, and talk about trusting, right? And you would not look at a child who has Down syndrome and say, well, that looks like victim consciousness. Never. You would never think that. They literally are like radiating joy. And it's because they have access to their trust, right? But when you look at someone who has victim consciousness, they're walking down the street and they're clutching their purse and they're, like it's visible, right? It's visible on their face. They look like a victim. You can see it because they're in fear. That's what it is the fear. And that fear opens the door to more wounding because it needs to come out. It needs to be seen. It needs to be healed. It needs to be worked through. So it was never the trust that created it. And she's saying that trusting and to have a trusting nature is not something that in and of itself calls you backward or against your higher purpose, so it doesn't hurt you. To be trusting can be fruitful, she says. It can be a really not only neutral, it can be an amazingly good thing, right? She's not saying, and this is important, her choice of words, she's not saying trust is always good. Trust is just a tool, right? So trust can be fruitful. It can be used really well when aligned with wisdom, when aligned with pure heart, pure thought, pure energy. So we want to connect to higher wisdom with our trust. That's the golden ticket. And she says, in the times that are coming, the trusting natured will find it easier to envelop themselves with clarity in the new consciousness. So this is something we need to do in order to proceed more easily with our own shift of consciousness, is to access our trust. She says, they are willing to open their hearts. They are willing to try again, though you have been derailed, though it has made you uncomfortable, though you have learned not always is trust respected. So she's acknowledging the wound and she's saying, okay, we understand. She understands that this isn't easy for us, that we have to navigate our wounds to come back to this place where we say, okay, I'm going to try to step out from behind the wall. She says, how will you find your way when your trust has been so mishandled? And I like that she's not pulling punches here. She's saying, like, yeah, like we have all been sucker punched at least once, at least once. And that is why we have our trust issues in the first place. So she says, it's been so mishandled. Then she says, how will you let go of resentment and protections and the great vest of insulation you wear about yourself to keep away those intrusions? And we do, right? Some of us are just like, yeah, I'm never doing that again, right? Never going to try that one again. I'm going to try it. And like, I knew this one person who she was wanting to be an actress, and she was young, and she saved up and saved up and saved up and saved up to go to a festival, like a Shakespeare festival in Ashland. And she wanted to, and this was like, and she told everybody she was going to do this. And she was so excited. And she worked all summer and earned the money, paid her way up, auditioned, and she didn't make it. And she didn't get a part. And she was so crushed that she never auditioned again. Like that was just the end. She just stopped. She never did it again. And it was this lack of trust, right? So wounded, so disappointed, everything, all of it. And so trust shattered, trust that the world was going to receive her, trust that there's a space for her in the world shattered, and just choosing to just stop, to not ever do it again. So we're being asked to reverse that, right? To challenge that, to decide to try again. And it is one of our, like, as humanity, like, hope is one of our biggest assets, is that, we are living, and the angels have told us, Isla's told us, that we're like living in a breath of hope, that we have this infinite capacity to try again. So we just have to tune into that, and to believe that we will have the discernment to not need protection. And then she says, and I would say to you now that your trust is an elevation, right? So if we can do it, if we can lean into our trust, it will raise our frequency, right? A tool to lift you up, that you may rely upon it like a bridge to carry you forward. So a huge reason why to do this, right? It is part of how we shift our vibration. She says, trust is easily found again when you settle upon the concept that these past mishaps were not derived from your trust, but from what else was apparent in that moment, from where else you were entangled at that time, that the trust was but a gentle barrier that did not prevent those occurrences from happening. It did not encourage them to happen. So again, just a tool, right? And we blame it because it didn't protect us from what we created, from what we manifested in our reality. But it didn't encourage it. It didn't make it happen. It just didn't prevent it. And then she says, as you are transfixing upon your new future, the gentleness of this barrier is exactly what is needed. So why is trust so gentle of a barrier? Like, you think it should be made a little bit more fortified to keep out the bad experiences? It can't be, because the fact that it is a gentle barrier, the fact that it's easy to move through, is the exact thing that we need right now, right? We need a very easy and transparent veil that we can begin to move through to connect with spirit. So she says the gentleness of the barrier is exactly what is needed. It is a softening, a receptivity. This is what we're trying to move into. How can you wrangle against the protective nature that has been your solace, that has helped you guard against the pain of past occurrences? And then I highlighted these next two paragraphs, I highlighted as being important. It says, it is a choice to be made, right? So there isn't like a magic trick we have to do. It literally is, we have to choose. Like when I had to step out behind that wall for myself in my last relationship, it was literally, I didn't want to do it. There was no part of me that wanted to do it. I just had to have faith and trust in my guidance. And I just had to do it. I had to just choose. And it literally, in the choosing, the wall melted. So it isn't like you have to do a magic dance or like light candles or whatever you have to do. You literally just have to choose. You just have to choose. In the softening and the letting go, you free up so much energy, right? So how much energy did it take me to keep that wall in front of me all that time, right? Here I thought it was keeping me protected, but in fact, it is just keeping me in a system of wounding where I'm constantly playing little dialogues in my head to maintain that barrier. That takes a ton of energy, a ton of energy. And then she says, letting it go frees up so much energy. So much wisdom flows through you by so doing. You open yourself to a greater volume of divine energy when you allow your trusting nature to shine again. It lifts you in a moment. It raises you into a perspective within which divinity is shared. Right? So it's all that higher wisdom we get access to. From here, yes, your judgment is more thoughtful. It carries wisdom. That is the protection. It is not to be on guard within your own field. It is the perceptiveness that you will have, which you will anchor into, what you ought to want, what you ought to feel, what you ought to chase, where you can find yourself more easily, where you can reach the deeper part of yourself. So this is the idea that it's that chicken and egg thing. If we can take the leap first, step out from behind the wall, decide that we're going to trust again and stop protecting ourselves and be vulnerable and be honest and be ourselves and let ourselves be seen exactly as we are without feeling like we have to filter or protect ourselves. If we can do that, we remove the blockade from in front of our heart. That gives us access to higher wisdom, and that higher wisdom will guide us away from circumstances that are not in alignment with our highest and best. So the higher wisdom is the thing that it's giving us the protection that we have been trying to give ourselves, right? We've been wrapping ourselves up and blocking ourselves up and taking tons of energy, keeping ourselves small. If we just let ourselves shine loud and proud, then the wisdom does it for us. The wisdom you will immediately perceive if it's the wrong thing for you. Like you won't even need to worry about your trust being wounded because you'll know right away, you know what, I don't resonate with that. It doesn't feel good. I don't want to go that direction. I want to go this way. So that's the switch we're trying to make. There's truth in the saying that what is forgiven is not easily forgotten, and this has been your hardship, and this has been your dormancy, where you have closed yourselves off from each other. So it is that idea that, okay, maybe we forgive, but we hold that as a lesson. Like, yep, you're not going to fool me again, right? So it's not easily forgotten, and that's been our problem. That's where we put ourselves into dormancy, where we shut off parts of ourselves, where you have closed yourself off from each other specifically. And I would encourage you now to become aware that trust is a gateway through which you must voyage. She doesn't use words like must very often. So keep in mind that must is used a couple times in here, and it's always in the context of if you want to move into the higher state of consciousness, then this is how it needs to be done. This is the pathway. So she doesn't mean it as like she's telling us what to do. It's just saying if you want this, then this is the path. So that's the context for must. She's not ordering us by any means. So to become aware, trust is the gateway through which you must voyage. It is an opening of the self, letting down your barriers. And so many might feel or say, what about the evildoers, the wrongdoers of our time? How might one cohabitate or protect themselves against a similar occurrence? And she says, a trusting heart is a glad and happy heart. A happy heart needs no protection. A happy heart rises with the chorus of energies that are coming for you. It lifts you into a new field of experiencing. And this is that idea that when you shine from within, right? When you're full of light, no dark gets in. And how do you become full of light? All you got to do is remove what's in the way of your divinity, which is our barriers, right? Our resistance, the things we fight against. That's it. And it seems so simple. We are so conditioned to have to fight everything. The idea that we don't have to do something is hard for us to grasp it. You know, the idea of floating down the river as opposed to swimming upstream, that we think, well, if I'm not struggling, I must not be doing it right. But we have to get into this perspective that letting go might be the hardest thing we've ever done. But if we can just do it, everything flows. And then all of a sudden, we have access to wisdom, to energy, to the things that we need to propel us even further. So she says, shall this be without wisdom? No, no. To be trusting without wisdom is chaos indeed. To be trusting where you are now in the stage of life you have attained, where you are within reach of your own self-understanding, that is something different. So she is saying, like, trust is a tool, right? Trust is not a savior. So do you use trust without wisdom? No, it is a tool to be used within the consciousness of your higher connection. That's the goal, right? Is to get to the place where we open the door, we have the connection, but trust is not the point. It is the tool to get there. And then she says, and I would encourage yourselves to return your focus and your focal point back to the concept of your own trust and to discover where you are yet holding on to the specter of wrongdoing, holding yourself against it, resisting what is. And that's this is the inquiry, like how do we discover any place in ourselves where we are in resistance? And she says, and it is that idea, is there anywhere where you're holding this specter of wrongdoing? I love that because it is like when I was in the process of trying to find forgiveness, like in my early relationships, I really struggled. It's particularly the first one before I'd learned and before I started my path of awakening. I was really having a hard time forgiving, and I knew I needed to forgive. Like I knew that was what I wanted. I would just say, like, how do I forgive? How do I do it? How do I do it? You know, I couldn't seem to, I knew I wanted to, couldn't seem to get there. And I had kept experimenting with my thoughts. What if I think of it this way? What if I think of it this way? And I tried just giving it like a blanket excuse. Well, this person is just bad. This person is just, a bad person. And that is why this happened and it couldn't be helped and it's just their nature. What I figured out from that is it didn't work at all. It did not help me in the slightest. As a matter of fact, the bigger monsters we create, the worse it gets. If you make the person who hurts you into a really, really big monster, monsters are powerful, right? It has a ton of power over you. It doesn't make you feel free, right? It keeps you in the role of victim for that monster, right? Oh, that monster is terrible. And they victimized me. And the worse monster they are, the worse victim you are. So it's a terrible dynamic. So the only way out of it is to recognize that that person isn't a monster, right? That person was, and the way I came to peace was understanding that everything that happened was helping me. It is what woke me up. That experience is what woke me up. So I'm at this point, I'm incredibly grateful, and I'm incredibly grateful to that person's higher self, because that higher self and I had a contract that person was going to create that much drama and trauma in my life, so that it would shake me out of being very asleep, right? It took a big kick in the rear to wake me up. And that's what I got. Thank you very much. And so and that is what freed me, right? That's what freed me from my, from the forgiveness. That's what brought me to it. It was gratitude, learning how to be grateful for that experience. So so that idea that the specter of wrongdoing, right? Where we hold, is there anywhere that you're holding on to the specter? The specter is like making it bad, making it evil, making it wrong, right? That is, and when it's like that, you hold yourself against it, you resist it, it creates victim consciousness. So, and identifying that, and then just choosing to rewrite that story in your head and to say, okay, that specter is not evil, right? That specter is not, a terrible person or terrible circumstance. Everyone is the hero of their own story. This is the thing that'll blow your mind. If you go to like death row in a jail and you talk to people who have committed murder, they will all tell you a story in which they are the hero, right? In which they were saving the world, or they were saving someone, or it had to be done, or they all in their own mind, they all have a justification for what they've done. And so nobody was like, I'm the bad guy. like nobody does that. And so this idea of a specter of wrongdoing, it is that we have to get into the space where we can release that and recognize that everything is done for our highest and best. Everything is done to guide us into deeper and deeper understanding of ourselves. Anything that happens to you in your life was already existing inside of you before it occurred. And that's, I think, the turning point, when we recognize it can only happen if it was a match for your energy as it already existed. If something bad happens, it means there was already a belief system. There was already something inside that contained that energy. And so the answer is to heal it so that it never happens again. That's the answer. Not that I have all the answers, but that's one answer. That's an answer if you want it. If you like it, you can take it too. It's my answer. Okay. Let's see, where am I now? Ask yourself this riddle. How might you open the door if you are so actively keeping it shut? I love that, right? If we're trying to open the door to higher consciousness, how can we open the door to higher consciousness, which is what we're trying to do, if we are so actively keeping the door shut? It's the same door, right? The same door that we allow the world in is the door that we allow higher consciousness in. And how can we allow it in if we are so actively keeping it shut? So we got to open the door. We got to trust. She says, and trust is the key. It is how to open the doorway to let the light of your divinity move through you to access the wisdom that keeps you safe. Therefore, you must take a leap. You must make a choice if you choose to move forward. You must embrace what you are, who you are, how you are, and trust the world to embrace you. You must experience yourself in freedom. You must know what it is to like this world as a reflection of what you are. This is trust. Beautiful. And she says, trust is before you now. Trust dangles like a song you remember, tinkling slowly, quietly, far away, calling you back to itself, like that Porsche in the garage jingling the keys. Offering you this recipe for your own enhancement, for the ease of your voyage, to find a way to soften what you are holding yourself against, to release your grip, to open your heart just a little bit more. Trust is the antidote, not entirely a cure, but it opens you up to what is the powerful flow of your own joy. And this will carry you far. So what is the actual cure is your joy, right? Trust is just the tool to get there. But joy, yeah, your joy is what's going to make it happen. And then she says, I bless you, thank you, and say goodbye. So yes, it's a really cool message, and I think it challenges us. Is it stuff some of it we know, some of it we've heard, but I think it really challenges us to reframe the concept of trust, because it is, like I said, in our society, in our culture, someone who is you never hear that person is so beautifully trusting. It is, if you are too trusting, that's what we say, right? It's always considered somebody, it's like weakness. Trust is like weakness in our society. And what she's saying is we have named it wrong, right? Trust is actually strength. Trust is what opens the channel to your divinity, right? It is a tool. We just have to learn how to use it properly. And the more and it is chicken and egg. When we decide to use it, when we open the heart, we have access to the divine wisdom. And that gives us the 1-2 punch, the superpower, which is trust combined with wisdom, which then guides us to living our life in alignment with spirit, with what is in our highest and best good. So we are no longer putting ourselves into situations that need protection, right? We don't need protection. We also are full of joy, right? Which is, we're lit up from the inside out. Our divinity inside of us is glowing. So there's no reason we need protection. So it is a really cool message, much easier to talk about than it is to do. so let's support each other. You know what I mean? Like, let's do this and support each other, and we will be a trustworthy community of support and love as we decide to try to lower our barriers. Is there anywhere in your life where you can be a little more vulnerable? And that's, I think, an easy way to place to start. Is there anything you could do, even tomorrow in a conversation? Is there something a little more vulnerable that you could share about yourself? A little more receptive, a little more revealing about you? Is there something you've been holding on to? Are you that secret artist that has been like writing by themselves in a cage for years, or painting secretly and has never shown anybody anything, right? Could you, Rebecca's making a face like, yes. Could you be a little vulnerable and bring your stuff out to the public and share it with a friend, even with just a friend, to open up to a little bit of trusting that you will be received, that you will be loved, that the world is receptive to you? Is it something that maybe, do you speak your mind? Do you hold back feeling like you have to keep harmony at all costs? Do you speak your truth when you're upset, when you're sad? Do you tell a friend if you said that hurt my feelings? Does that come easy for you? Or do you struggle with that? And that is trust. Can you trust a friend to receive your truth? Right? And so there's so many layers of this, and just, even if you just look through your life, take an inventory. If you can find one, and then make a commitment to yourself that you're going to make yourself vulnerable in that area. And that just takes one more layer out from in front of your heart, opens you up a little bit more to the light to come in. Every little bit counts. It's not all or nothing. It's cumulative. It builds up a little bit. And every little bit you get, it gets easier. All right, you guys, thank you so much for being with us today. Phenomenal community, phenomenal message. I really appreciate the conversation. And I will see you guys next Friday live. Bye, you guys.